as someone who spends a lot of time in the drop-in and managing all of our brokerage volunteers, those are volunteers who help match people to a volunteering role that is of interest to them. We are confronted with a challenge, especially recently, of many different agencies sending along their clients with a predetermined amount of time and hours that they need to fulfill to complete a certain scheme. Yours is potentially one of them. And one of the things that I think is a problem, potentially, is that a lot of people do come to us and they say, I need full-time volunteering starting next week for 2 weeks. And we're thinking, well, actually, that's a work placement and you should have arranged that maybe a few weeks or months ago. What that really is short-term volunteering, tailor-made opportunities, if that makes sense. That's usually something that you would negotiate directly with the organization themselves. We have, well, I can't think of one opportunity that we have like that. It's not that it doesn't exist, actually. It's not that people don't want it, but our members are not advertising that at the moment. So if one of your clients was interested in a certain field, for example, and then they had a look at a volunteering opportunity that they were interested in, they could then contact the organization and say, would you have the capacity to have me in your office for 2 weeks or 30 hours a month or whatever the case may be? But a lot of times that organization is going to say no. And the reason is because do they have enough need for that amount of volunteering? Do they have enough desk space? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many things that are involved in this. I think coming on to the time commitment side of things, I know that you guys, as in agencies who are contracted to get people into paid employment, do want to get people into paid employment with a certain amount of time. But the reason that people say 4 to 6 months, like we say 6 months at Volunteer Centre Camden, and we say 3 months, after 3 months we can give you a reference, because before then, what are you really going to be able to say? Well, they showed up, they looked friendly, they smiled, they made a nice cup of tea. That's about it, really. And it does take quite a few sessions for our volunteers to be trained up to do what they do. And then they might only be coming in half a day a week or 1 day a week, so it really depends. And then the other issue that was brought up was about, and I think Jack brought it up, was perhaps people need training from maybe an agency like yourself, or you put them in touch with the training before they start their volunteering. So first they get the training, then they can do some volunteering, and then hopefully they're ready for paid employment. Because we get quite a lot of people who are long-term unemployed, who are not quite sure what they want to do next. They have a bit of an idea of what they want to get into, but if we do give them things like conservation work or something like that, that they might have the skills, they're saying, well, I don't want to do that. And I'm not, that is just really not what I want to do. And oftentimes we send them back to the agency that referred them to say, I think what you really need is something that we can't give you at the moment, if that makes sense.
Thank you. In the organisation, A3, we ask for people into paid employment, but I think the motivation to get people into volunteering work is for them to actually see what it is like for a real life work experience. And I think when people come onto the programme, we put them through full training with us on different modules. But we've had people on the programme since October last year to now. So I think those people have been sitting on the programme, we've been training. And I think just for them to utilise volunteering opportunities would be a really positive thing, because it's time spent not actually doing anything. I think they're taking benefits and taking things from us in terms of training to give something back. I think we need to be perhaps supporting people and giving more advice, which is why today is useful, so we can promote volunteering more. Because if we look at the amount of time they've been on the programme not achieving anything to what they could have achieved, this could be a good benchmark for them to see the time that's been spent sort of not doing anything.
I do agree, although Mike's question whether they've really been not achieving anything if they've been attending your training for the last 6 months. Hopefully they have actually achieved something during that time by coming to the sessions. The other thing to say is that it's important for all volunteer involvement organisations to think or to consider if somebody's been long-term unemployed for, say, 6 months, a year, 12 or more, the structure of their day and their week is very different to the structure of somebody who works. And to go from unemployment to, I don't know to what extent they have to come to your training, is it full-time or part-time? Okay, so to go from unemployment where all of their time is their own to then going to part-time training where they're sat in a training session to then going to expect people to volunteer full-time for 2 weeks or for any period is a huge step. And it's far more realistic to say to somebody how, so maybe to start off a half a day a week or 1 day a week and let them work up. And certainly when I interview volunteers, it's always the case that, it's often the case that they want to contribute far more hours than is realistic because they perceive themselves to have lots of free time. Whereas if they've gone from having all of their time free to very little of it free, it's a massive difference in their lifestyle. So they need to, it's useful to use a transition period to get people in slowly. So it's worth remembering that, although you want to help to motivate these people that have been unemployed for a long term, and they've been on your training and you perceive that they're not necessarily advancing, maybe even just a few hours a week is a big achievement because the actual process of going into somewhere every day or once a week is massive for some people, and going forwards with that is good.
Just to add to that, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around linking up the employment agenda and volunteering. And I think part of the problem is, not the problem, part of the situation is that a lot of employment providers are working one way. A lot of voluntary sector organisations, the reason that we exist isn't for volunteering. Most organisations exist to be able to deliver service to residents, and they do that through involvement of volunteers. So volunteering isn't the ultimate goal, it's the work that volunteer does is the ultimate goal. I know at the Volunteer Centre we've had some fabulous volunteers through Action for Employment, but a lot of the organisations that we work with can't always provide that kind of very structured, set number of hours, set number of days a week over a certain period of time, because the two sectors work in different ways. We could spend all afternoon talking about that, but I just wonder if there's, we've got people here from a variety of different volunteer involving organisations, and I just wonder if anybody else has any experience or is able to put their hand up and say, I'll talk to Charlotte at the end, I want some of her people to come volunteer with me.
Any hands?